why is to help people succeed over the long term. Finally, just a bit of introduction here. So finally, as you're listening to me asking those questions, feel free to look up my website, Delium Advisory. Look me up on LinkedIn and also on Twitter under the moniker Tero P. That's my handle, Tero P. What is next? So what I want to do is I want to basically look at 4 things tonight. It pivots around the 2 key questions. That's where we're headed. And then to give you some tools toward the end there with the focusing your energy and resources. But what I want to do is to give you some food for thought. I'm not one of these futurists who rattles on and says this will happen and that will happen. No, I've got a Masters of Strategic Foresight. I've actually studied this in depth. So I want to give you some food for thought. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Rather, my approach here tonight is to help and support. So when we come back to the invite, the invitation we will receive, the advertisement about tonight, part of me, my response, the invitation to be the speaker tonight, my response was, how can I assist? How can I assist with you with business resilience? How can I assist with helping think about innovation, about recovery? So with the few minutes I have with you, I'll be providing some information, some tools, some points to reflect on as you redevelop your business strategy, and to help you explore emerging markets, perhaps emerging technology, emerging business models, to explore that edge of change, if you will. Really, this session is a work on your business, not work in your business. It's a work on your business. And one thing I will note, studies have shown that if you have a strategic plan, you improve your strategic plan. Just by having that plan, that direction of where you're going to go, your business improves by at least 10%. And so what I'm aiming to do is to give you some inputs, give you some guidance into actually helping you develop that strategic plan. So going to the agenda, looking at the emerging trends. I've got a second screen, so if I'm looking off to the side, I'm looking at the second screen here. So the emerging trends, what's actually happening around the world, some business model trends, what's actually going to affect you in your business. It might be in the coming weeks, it might be in the coming months, but to prepare for that. The focal point, the pivot point for the session is the 2 key questions, pardon me, and then help you with focusing your energy in the time ahead. Here's lots of images, lots of things which are happening. What are trends? Trends are, it's almost like a pattern of events. There's a pattern which is happening. One thing I like to do is I like to do 5K runs. And over the last few weeks, I've upped the pace a little bit for sections of that 5K, and I've noticed a trend with my weight going down just a little bit. And for me, that's a worthwhile trend to see. But why are trends important? Why are trends important? Well, what they do is they help you to see over the horizon, and they help you to see what opportunities lie ahead, and also help you to see what risks lie ahead as well. So they help you take advantage, exploit, look at opportunities which you can profit from, but they also help you to look at the risks which may be coming your way, and so what you need to mitigate. Let's look at these individual pictures. Obviously prominent right now is the USA riots and what's happening there. But if you just scratch below the surface and actually see what's happening here in Europe and other places around the world, there's a shift in politics. There's moving away from an acceptance of how things are. People are wanting to move to a new way of doing things. Consider Brexit. Consider some of the responses to the government's response to the pandemic. A lot of people saying, let's do things differently as we come out. Think of some of the changes which are happening as a result of all the issues around China, the populist leaders, all these pandemic and the coronavirus impacts. Where is the impact in this? May affect your suppliers, your destination markets, your marketing message, affect you in those ways. Retail, what's happening there with the retail? Obviously it goes without saying there is a shift to online, but there's also a change of consumption patterns. There is some talk that we might revert to Depression era mentality, back to the 30s mentality, where it's that waste not, want not. There's also that you've got that. There's also the increasing use of in-shop technology, tracking of consumer behaviours in the digital space. So the impact on these trends is in the cost of operations. It's in your market presence, how you handle that, how you do that. On the right-hand corner, there's the education. Yes, it's long established. One of the trends here is blended delivery, where it's the mix of the in-class, the online, blending. It's not just one mode of delivery, it's a blending. Also, one of the trends is micro-credentials. There's this student-centered learning, and there's also this, and this may affect those who are going through high school now or early stage university. Years ago, all you needed was a high school diploma, and that was it. You'd be able to get a job. Years later, it was a certificate. Then it became a degree. You needed a degree to land a reasonable job. Then there was a double degree, and it's almost like it's now becoming a master's and even a PhD. And so there's this move with qualifications that people need. And then around education and learning and knowledge, there's this tension. Here's this scientific expertise, and here's this populist information base, and there's this tension. Witness the anti-vaxxers, witness the discussions around climate change, witness, there's lots of tensions here around science and knowledge. So where does this trend impact you? Perhaps in the quality of your staff. You've got a broader range of people, perhaps, but a narrower range that are highly qualified, well suitable, and that can actually benefit your business. It also impacts on your ability, your willingness, if you will, to innovate, and it also impacts upon your knowledge of consumers. Off to the left-hand side there's the metaphor for renewable energy. Renewable energy is becoming increasingly cost competitive. It's almost as if in time, might be 10 years away, where there will be an abundance of energy. And so the question probably to be asked in 10, 20 years perhaps is, that abundance mentality around energy. What can we do if energy costs us relatively little? Also in this is the circular economy. There's the greenwashing, but the true green, the greenwashing of some businesses, and the increasing environmental consciousness. The impact here of this trend is upon the cost of operations. It may affect your market positioning. Moving on to cities. Smart cities is all the rage, and it's slightly shifting in its emphasis, but part of that conversation around smart cities is that support and the drive for outcomes, putting in technologies in place, deploying technologies to drive some outcomes. And also thinking of cities, you've got around age, demography. You know, between now and the mid-2030s, globally, there will be double the number of people aged 60 and over than there are now. And so you can see some trends, you can see some changes just from that. Urbanisation. Around 65% of the global population is in cities right now. And over the next 10, 15 years, that's thought to grow to about 75, even 80%. Public transport, always the cry for more public transport. So how does this impact? Impacts you perhaps on products. What range of products is going to be acceptable? Your staffing. You think of the amount of people that you have available to choose from. Pricing of goods and services that you produce. And also, too, the number of similar markets. You know, if you can sell in Melbourne, why can't you sell in Montreal? If you can sell in, you know, we think, okay, well, why can't we sell in Brisbane or over to New Zealand across the ditch? Why not through Europe or the Americas? And that same thinking is awakening people in overseas markets, selling back into here. So, you know, the impact there is on the size, and you're thinking about what type of markets. And then also what, as a result of that, there's that competitive pressure on you as well. And then finally, there's digital and AI and quantum computing. You know, data, algorithms, they are king. You know, a key question for you that perhaps your competitors are already answering: do you mine your data for insights? You know, think of all those touch points on your websites, your suppliers, your buyers, each of those things. You've got some data points there. Are you actually mining? Because that's where it's headed. It's almost like where the competition is headed is who best uses data, who's got the best algorithms to mine their data. And also too is increasing job automation. You know, here's a direct question. In your business, how many jobs, tasks of jobs, within jobs, are routine manual or routine cognitive? If it's routine, it can be computerized. So all of this stuff is impacting how you operate, your cost of operations. It's how competitive you are. It's also impacting your innovation. So we've looked at, here's all this stuff which is happening. But what about your business? What are your business and how you actually create value, organize value, deliver value? There's different business models and all that sort of stuff, but really it's all about, okay, how do we create value? How do we organize value? How do we deliver value? You know, creating value. It's about the inputs, about your profit center. What makes you you? What's the actual distinctive good or service that you produce? Organizing value, your staff, your processes, and deliver value. Obviously the sales, but also there's the marketing, there's the support. So what are the trends which are affecting business models? Obviously with the creation of value is that digital input. You know, how well do you understand your customers? You know, what makes you you? Tied in with this here is this corporate social responsibility. You might know it as the triple bottom line. You know, triple bottom line is finance, people, and the environment. Yes, this probably goes through all three. I thought it might be best put here. But there's also a trend which is moving to a quadruple bottom line, where people are taking account of cultural values as well. You know, organising value. You know, the staff that you have to help you organise the value and operate, and even yourself. it used to be years ago, we're always after work-life balance. We've got this seesaw, yeah? And work-life balance, it used to be about this value called time, yeah? And we didn't want to spend too much time at work, and we didn't want to spend too much time at home, and we had this seesaw, and we were trying to balance time. Well, now it's not time. That object which is being balanced is values, people's values. And so people have values at home, and they want those values at work. The values they have at home, what they want to see in their co-workers, they want to see in their bosses, they want to see in their direct reports, in the products they are part of. And
sorry, Paul, just a quick, someone has just mentioned that you broke up a little bit when you were mentioning the triple bottom line, and just asked if you could repeat those.
Sure, no worries at all. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so with the triple bottom line, so this is the creation value bit. So the triple bottom line is around the finance, people, and environment. It's accounting for those three. Where the trend is to the quadruple bottom line, where we're adding, can't hold up 4 fingers, what we're adding is the cultural value. So it's moving from finance, people, environment to adding cultural. And there is even some early markers that there'll be a quintuple bottom line where it's all about purpose, and that's coming ahead. With organising value, that work-life balance I was talking about, here it's interesting. What's happened recently, just in the last few days, people are saying to Mark Zuckerberg, Mark, you've been letting Trump get away with these comments. You said you wouldn't. Our values, your values aren't our values, and we're resigning. Same thing has happened to Google recently, where some employees have said, look, we're really not happy. You said you wouldn't, that you are being involved in the US military. We're out of here. The values that the bosses were espousing, not quite in the light of day, not quite shining up, not quite aligning with employees. Other things which are happening, obviously, right now is this working from home, and this collaboration is a competitive advantage going ahead. And on competitive advantage, here's a direct question, and it's something I ask myself all the time in the teams I've managed and been part of. Are you capable of supporting others' better ideas? Are you willing to work with people and put aside for the benefit of the team? And then there's this last set of trends around the business model, which is delivering value. Your values around marketing. What's happening right now over in the US. Are there companies which are coming out in support of Black Lives Matter? And so, what social issues are you willing to support? Are you willing to say no to? So that's becoming more and more important. And then some of the trends, probably a little bit well established, but more going ahead, pardon me, around support. There's obviously email and phone, but also chat and support through social. And it goes without saying that that chestnut of training, just more and more training of your people. So we've got all this stuff here, yeah. We've got all this stuff which is happening, all these trends, and these pressures and these trends which are actually impacting the business. And then here's you. What decisions do you need to make? What do you need to consider to move forward? It's like that you're in this whitewater rapids. Where do you go? Are there potential opportunities that you will miss? Are there potential risks that you will overlook and you will stumble, and that'll be the end? I remember distinctly, I was born in Adelaide, moved to Alice Springs, collected family responsibilities and moved down here to Melbourne. And it was 1999 when we moved here. I was working in the CBD. standing there at the Berwick train station, there in front of me was Mitre 10. And, you know, they were operating quite well, quite profitably, so I thought. But at the time, just up the road, Bunnings had just started. And I witnessed this over just a couple of years. It's almost like they had their blinders on. They didn't want to see the competition was there. And you can go past there and then our car yards. You know, also knew this web developer. And when the internet and when websites first came out, he was making a handsome, quite a tidy profit from developing websites for people. But then times changed, and the tools that he was using and that value that he was producing, people could do it for free or almost free. And his handsome profits disappeared. You know, these two cases are examples of people who haven't looked, organisations that haven't looked over the horizon and prepared for, in these cases, the risks. But the case can also be made that, you know, here are some opportunities which they also missed. So how do you make sense of all this for you and your situation? 2 questions. Here's the pivot point. Here's the 2 questions. What seems to be happening and what might you need to do? No, it's not what is happening. It's not what will we do right now. It's not that. It's becoming comfortable, becoming familiar, if you will, with uncertainty. A bit things not being, you know, settled. What seems to be happening, what might you need to do? And this takes time, this takes a little bit of energy, and it also is, you know, give yourself some space to actually, I'm going offline, I'm going to spend a Thursday morning, it's my best morning, I'm going to spend Thursday morning at a coffee shop or somewhere, and I'm just going to, you know, think about stuff which is coming from over the horizon. Or it might be, okay, and take myself from the team away and we're just going to do some brainstorming, you know, up country somewhere, or, you know, get me in or whatever to run a workshops or write reports or talking, whatever it is, giving yourself some space and permission to ask yourself these 2 questions. What seems to be happening and what might you need to do? On the smaller side, yeah, it's probably not, you know, you're more nimble. But the larger you are, the greater the sunk costs in the business, the more risks there are, but also there's greater opportunities. So it's almost as if you can see this as an insurance policy. So 2 questions. So you're asking these 2 questions. How can you actually bring some direction here? You might have heard of the PESTEL framework: political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. Political, about policies, industry support, all that sort of stuff. Economic, around inflation, interest rates. Social, about population, about values, demographics. Technological change, talking about IT, science, don't forget the other hard sciences. Environmental, climate change, obviously. Legal, we're talking about standards, statutes, laws. So what you need to do is ask yourself some questions. What's actually happening over the next 3 to 12 months in each of these areas? You know, what's likely to happen? You know, are there some impacts? Are there some trends? Are there some changes which are happening to yourself, to your customers, to your competitors, to your suppliers? You know, over the next 3 to 12 months, you can probably go out even longer if you want to. And then by going around that circle, by asking some questions and reflecting on what's happening in each of these areas, then rate the risk, the impact and the likelihood of that risk impacting your business, or the opportunity, that business case analysis. What's the cost? What's the profit? So going through each of those 6 areas and then picking out 1 or 2 where you can prioritize your effort. And here is where this all flows. I've got 2 slides after this, basically review slides. So, you know, over the years, I've been involved in strategic plans, whether for business groups. I was a director for Knox Community Health Service for 3 years, been in developing strategies for IT teams, and studied this at Masters of Strategic Foresight. It's a component of the PhD. So your strategic plan will give you direction, but just by looking at the here and now, it's not enough. First thing you need to settle is, what is your vision? Probably come back to that Simon Sinek thing of why, but you know, what is your vision? You know, the vision statement combines 3 elements: your envisioned future state, success, your envisioned future state, what values you have, what stakeholders you're servicing. That vision becomes bedrock. You know, Disney's vision, to make people happy. That's what their vision is. All things flow from that vision. Your mission is putting that vision into practice. It's generally how you will carry it out. You know, for example, Coles' vision is to, okay, we need to feed Australia. And so their mission is to have shops all around Australia with the produce that Australians like. Then the next thing, after you settle the vision, the mission is good, but then you've got to do this strategic thinking bit. This is these 2 questions: what seems to be happening? What might you need to do? You know, here is environmental scanning, looking at the trends. It's also perhaps some scenario planning to go through that. Then there's, after you've done the vision, the mission, and you've gone through and got some inputs, then it becomes strategic objectives. You know, here is where you can do your SWOT analysis: your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses, the internal; opportunities and threats, which are external. And then you can sort out the actual components of the mission, the actual component, the actual strategic objectives. And a good place to start for getting your strategic objectives sorted out is the balanced scorecard. Looking at your systems, looking at people, looking at finance, looking at your learning and development. And then from there, you can develop your strategic actions, you know, which is the actual tasks and timing to complete each objective. So vision, your mission, strategic thinking, which is asking those 2 questions, doing that scanning analysis, perhaps doing some scenario planning, then establishing some strategic objectives. Helping you with that would be that SWOT analysis, guiding you in actually what to put down. Yes, you can use business plans. You can probably use those which you have got. Might be some operational plans, whatever. That's, you know, they can plug in there to your strategic objectives. And then it's your strategic actions, the actual tasks, the actual timing, the tasks and the timing that you will do. In summary, what have we done? We've looked at emerging trends. We've looked at those 2 questions. We looked at helping you with some prioritisation of your efforts, and giving you some thoughts about how to develop your strategic plan. Emerging trends, we looked at all those different areas. We've looked at also the pressures on the business model and emerging trends, some established, some which are emerging trends. Those 2 questions, you need to give yourself permission to step back, take a breath. What seems to be happening? What might we need to do? Give yourself that permission, that space. And then from there, then you can launch off, and you can start to focus your energy, focus the energy of your team, and know and be measurable actually when you meet your vision. You know, your effort priorities, using the PESTLE framework to actually look around, to actually see what's happening, and then that strategic planning, the vision, the mission, the strategic thinking, the strategic objectives, and then the strategic actions. I finish with this. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. So thank you. I trust that this time that we've had together has been helpful to you, that I've been able to give you some tools to help you to think with what lies ahead for you, giving you some food for thought, giving you a direction to head. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Tom. And if there's some questions, or if you want to catch me later, Twitter, LinkedIn, chase me up through our website. Tom.
All right, thank you, Paul. Food for thought amongst that lot.
Yes.
Before we get into everybody's questions, and feel free to let me know if you want to ask a question verbally, because obviously we're now at the end of the presentation, so we can be interrupted. But I'm going to, before we get to the questions, I'm going to ask a couple myself. Sure. One of the things that I find is difficult to do with keeping up to date with the emerging trends and what's happening, particularly now where things are changing so quickly. Yes. The issues of the COVID have particularly made it hard, but even going forward, as that we get over that, and the economic issues that will happen as a result of the COVID shutdowns and isolation issues, but also the technology change. How do you keep up to date with those changes? What's the best way to find out or keep up to date with what's happening?
Well, first it First it is keeping up to date. For me, the bottom line is, am I curious? That's the for me. And so if I'm curious, then I will do some reading here. Go to some mainstream, if you will. There's lots of conspiracy stuff. There's lots of stuff on the fringe, but generally it's that. And I think the watchword is curiosity. And then also, what area are you interested in? And a good start for that is what's going to affect me, what's going to affect my business.
You mentioned under emerging trends about staffing and making sure the staff come along with you and get, I guess, eventually want them to have the same vision. How do you get those sort of staff? How do you select the right staff member? What sort of things should you be looking for?
You can train skill, but you can't train attitude. And so if you've got an opportunity to shape the team, think closely about, who do you want to work with? And also, let me see, there's that, but there's also, what's here. And so there's whole lots of, one of the things I do is I lecture on leadership. There's whole lots of motivation theories which abound. And it all depends on what's your attitude toward people. And so if your attitude toward your staff, your direct reports, perhaps even those above you, if your attitude is they're lazy, good for nothing, that type of thing, it's not going to go well. But if you know that Aretha Franklin song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, a bit of that, a bit of kindness, a bit of direction, on the same page, what helps is having a team go through a planning. Might be strategic planning, strategic thinking, whatever, but going through some sort of planning process. By going through that, it's actually saying, okay, team, this is the direction where we're going to head. And some people might say, I'm out of here. Others might say, yeah, we're actually excited about this. I've got some now skin in the game. I'm all in. So there's, it's being mindful of the people who are in and around you.
So you're saying you really skills, as much as they're nice to have, more important to have the attitude and a person who it almost philosophically agrees with you in that some sense.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You want diversity of thinking, but you want people that basically you can generally get along with. But also regarding the skills, if you're part of a team which is developing some quantum computers, you need to have some, you need to have a base level of knowledge. So yes, skills, you need to have a base level of skills, but skills can be improved. The personality, the attitudes, that takes a little bit more time.
And I'm assuming that what you've put forward today, even though it's related, we put this forward more related to the issues about the COVID-19 disruption, if you want to use that term.
Yes.
But I'm assuming that this is relevant just to any situation, normal times, if you want to call it that. I mean, I don't like the word normal, but in the usual circumstances, what you've said today, I guess, would be relevant to all those sort of circumstances.
Yes. So what it's, let me see, all of this is relevant. And so all these changes in education, in politics, in renewable energy, all that sort of stuff, that's happening regardless of what's happening with the pandemic. What's happening, all the pressures on the business model, those emerging trends with the business model, they are happening anyway. But one particular thing is around the working from home.
All right. Has anybody got any questions they want to ask? Feel free to unmute yourself or turn your video on and ask some questions if anybody's got any. I don't think I'm hogging all the questions, but I'm happy for other people to come in. Another question I have is related to coming up with strategic objectives.
Yes.
And that's something that I have, to be fair, a bit of trouble with. And we're trying to become more strategic in council.
Yep.
In the past, we've been a little bit reactive, and I think we're trying to be a bit more forward thinking.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, what tools or methods do you suggest or do you know of that might help come up with those certain strategies? Or is there any way that you think that it makes it a little bit, I'm not saying easier, but enables you to make better decisions on what your strategy should be?
So two things. One thing is people need to be generally not generally on the same page, but they're all reading the same book. It might be in different chapters, but they're all reading the same book. So there's two parts here. One is there needs to be a discussion with amongst the team. What are the big themes which people are concerned about? And so that discussion, scenario planning or whatever, and analysis of trends can actually help with that. So that it's not just here and now, but it's also looking ahead. So there's that, and then you can pick out the major themes. And the second thing with that is to, and that's where this the balanced scorecard for businesses come in. It could also probably apply to councils as well. But what's a reasonable framework from which you can start, which you can sort of plug those common themes into.
All right, thank you. I want to open it a little bit up to the participants, the people in the session. Has anybody done anything particularly different that they've found worked while as part of this COVID-19? Does anybody want to pop up and let's share with everybody else what they may have done? Nobody?
No, that's fine. That's
someone must have done something really nice.
It's either well explained.
What about you, Paul? What have you done that's a bit different over the last few months?
Okay, so my primary activity is the adult education, and so I've been living in a Zoom world, and so that's what's different. But also, what is different too is been having these virtual coffees with people. And so let's just say I'm going to meet someone for the very first time. pre-COVID, it'd be let's go down to the coffee shop, yeah, and sit down and have a chat back and forth. What I've been doing now is, okay, they'll grab their coffee, I'll grab my coffee, and they'll sit down here in my room, and they'll sit down in their room, and we'll have a bit of a chat. But it's interesting dynamic because it's not real life in the flesh. So you're actually looking at body language, through a flat screen.
Yeah, I must admit, as someone who's worked in a situation where every single day I went to an office and every day I came home, which over the last couple of years has been Bunjil Place. Prior to that, it was 66 Victor Crescent. Went into that office and every day come home. The last 3 months or so, 11 weeks, I think I worked it out. It's been that working from home has been a real different situation. As you can see, I've got my bookshelf behind me. You don't have my bookshelf behind me when I'm in the office. So that's great. I've got Claire has just put up. Do you want to talk about this, Claire? But commercialising a project will be launched later this year. You've had to move to Zoom communication, and welcome to our world. Yes, actually, we're in council. We're using Teams, but they do the same thing. Claire, are you happy to speak on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just found it a little bit challenging, maybe because of where I'm at in my process. I'm trying to build those relationships to make sure that my product gets delivered and gets to market and becomes a reality. So although I've had to do Zoom meetings, I'm actually really looking forward to when we can get back face-to-face. Because the isolation is getting a bit much, but also to just be able to build those relationships, which I find is very difficult to do via Zoom. Maybe it's just old-fashioned of me, but I just find it quite difficult, and I like to be face-to-face, and I feel like you get a better sense of people, and when you're trying to establish these relationships for people who are going to support your commercialisation project, I feel like those relationships are really key. So it's a good strategy, though.
Yeah, I agree. I find that it's easy to keep in touch with people you already know, but it's not as easy to make new relationships. Jennifer, I've noticed you've turned your video on. Are you wanting to say something?
I was perhaps going to ask a question, and a couple of things. One was, if you're working in council, Tom, does council, are they considering kind of taking the lead in terms of saying to people, hey, if you can work from home, then do work from home? Did they already have policies like that in place? Because I think it takes probably a lead organisation to model this to other businesses. Because I think it probably is about time we didn't do as much commuting.
We are. I don't know if it's probably not being promoted outside of the council, but we are not going back to the office anytime soon. There are a few people who are in the office who are deemed essential, people like, security staff, people who, IT, for instance, do a lot of stuff from there because they need to be part of close to the stuff that's required. We have some of our people who deal with disadvantaged groups are based in the office because sometimes people can't go to a home and things like that. So we have a few people there, but it's very, very limited. The way they're looking forward is we've been told today we probably will have half the number of desks we've had in the past because they just want to keep people a bit further apart. So the concept of you going into your same desk every day is probably going to disappear, not in terms of you'll have a different desk, but you probably be more desk sharing, which means there'll be a lot of cleaning and wiping down. So probably what will happen is people like myself will probably work maybe 1 or 2 days a week in the office and the rest of the time at home. So it'll be a combination. When that's going to happen, we're not sure, but it probably means the old concept of going to an office every day is disappearing. And if one thing that this has shown is that the capacity for people to work from home is probably a little bit better than what people thought. In council, there was a feeling that you can't all work from home, it's too hard, but this has proven that we can do it. Yes, there is a little bit of sometimes issues and sometimes connectivity, and I think internet's got to be improved, but it can be done. So I think that the longer term, I'm almost guaranteed we'll see that I won't be in the office every day. But what I see the benefit of that is it's going to be easy for me to go to visit a business from here. I'll be able to do that whenever I want. That sort of stuff won't change. What will be missing a little bit is probably the day-to-day interaction with other staff members that I work with. But that's why I think we'll still be going in 1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah,
I hope that answers your question. We haven't actually promoted that, but I think that's probably something we should say, because that is a bit of a leading situation.
Yes.
And I think that's right across the CBD as well. I reckon that's going to happen as well. You know, why travel on the public transport and be at risk?
Yeah, well,
sorry,
that's one
Jennifer.
thing. One thing,
why
City of
have all the
Casey.
huge
Sorry,
overheads?
Jennifer.
So
Sorry,
why
Jen.
have all the huge overheads of an expensive office in the CBD?
Yep.
You might actually see more people coming to live in the CBD, and so it sort of takes on more of a social life. Because I know, you know, years ago, central cities kind of almost were wastelands in terms of social aspect. It probably wasn't the same in Melbourne, but I know in Sheffield at the time, there was more and more people moving out to the suburbs, and the city centre was kind of dead for a long time. So
Melbourne was a bit like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was something, don't quote me on dates, but something like that, 70s or 80s, probably 80s. The population, the permanent population of the CBD was really low. I mean, a few thousand. If you look at the stats now, the population of the CBD is very large because of people. The sprawl that we've experienced in Melbourne needed to be reversed, and there was a bit of a push by government, but also I think a want from people to be closer to things like restaurants and shops and theatre, and so a number of people started moving to apartments, which drove an increase in the number of apartments, probably to a point where there's almost too many, and so the population of the CBD increased a lot. But interesting, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some office space transformed into other uses because of people will be working from home more. I'm not going to say that's going to be an easy change, and I think there'll be some landlords in particular who are going to struggle with that. But it's probably, if you go another 10 years in the future, and I'm not a futurist, so apologies, Paul. But if you look 10 years in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if you find that a lot of the office space has been turned into either apartments or some sort of share space of some kind, whether that's through spaces that people can meet or spaces where people can do activities that, as opposed to a workspace. That's just me thinking, just because I'm thinking Bunjil Place, for instance, if we're going to have half the number of people in there that we have now, then there's going to be a capacity to expand meeting rooms and community space and maybe the library and things like that. So we'll see. It'd be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, remember, sorry. What is it? It was probably toward the turn of this century where, when we were first here, there was like 15,000 people or less in the Melbourne CBD. And I think for a population area to be labelled a city, I think there was a boundary line of 10,000 or 15 or 20,000, whatever it was. And Melbourne City was in danger of losing its title as a city because not enough people are actually living there.
Well, it's definitely a city.
Maybe I'm showing my age, but you know, in my 20s, I loved living in cities. I loved living in London and Hong Kong and places. But now, if somebody says there's a training or a meeting in the city, my heart sinks, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go all that way. I live in Emerald, so it's.
All right.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock. I'm not saying you have to finish. We're quite happy to keep chatting. I'm just letting you know, people, it is 8 o'clock. So if people want to finish up, they're quite welcome to. But having said that, we're quite happy to stay a bit longer if people want to chat or talk or ask any questions. So I'm happy for that to continue, but it is officially the end time of the presentation. So I'd like to thank Paul for his presentation. Thank you for the participation of being here. This has been recorded, so it will be available for people to view, and for those who couldn't make it for whatever reason, they'll be available for them to have a look at. But I'm just about to stop the recording now.
Thank you.